Coming through.
All right, we are live here at the Vocal Mothership here in Dallas, Texas. I have my guest, a mentor and a true friend and a brother of mine. Not really, but we've known each other for a long time. Adrien Chabria, thank you for coming today.
It's such a pleasure being here, Curtis. Thanks a lot for having me.
Adrien is a good friend of mine, and he and I have hills and valleys in the tennis world. He's had more hills than I have, but you know, Adrien, tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, and all that stuff.
I grew up in just outside New York City as a tennis player. I'm I guess, third or fourth generation tennis player. My dad was a world-class player who got out of the corporate world and got into coaching tennis at a high level, and then at a club. So I kind of grew up around it, and I just love the game so much. Racket sports in general, squash, tennis, anything.
You're a baller.
I don't know about that, but pickleball, table tennis.
Yes.
I played the other sports too, like hockey and soccer, football, whatever. But yeah, just love them all.
So tell me about you're from New York.
Yeah.
And you live here in Dallas, right?
Yeah, I've been here about almost 25 years. I went to grad school out in California and moved here from Northern Cal, San Francisco, Berkeley area, and yeah, just. As people say about Texas, you get here as soon as you can.
Yeah.
So I've loved it here and loved, meeting my wife and love our sort of community and our son and
Let me get
church,
this straight
school,
here.
all that stuff. Yeah.
So, did you meet me when you called me? What happened with us again? How did we meet again? How did our
That's funny.
checks?
Yeah, I think it was
paths
like
cross?
fall, October, I believe, of '97. I came to a club job. I was the director of a club out in California and moved over here to a beautiful club down here in Dallas. And I guess you could say my predecessor, brilliant, sort of a legend in the industry, but I wasn't sort of left with anything in the shop.
And who was
so
that
it was
again?
like a great guy named Bill Boss.
Oh,
God
yes,
rest his
Bill
soul.
Boss.
He's gone
Yes,
now.
yes,
But
yes.
so I was starting from scratch, and I was like, I'd like to have immediately leagues, tournaments, this and that. So do I go to the store and buy balls that are sub-premium, or do I just call around and ask the Wilson rep, look, please order me whatever, 12 cases or whatever, free freight, whatever. But who should I go to around here that's a good account of Wilson, Penn, Dunlop, something that I like? And he's like, well, go to see Donnie and Curtis Reese up at Fair Oaks, and hopefully they'll, why don't you just call those guys? It's like, yeah, I've been meaning to call around anyway, so I'll call. And Donnie said, sure. When I show up, Donnie was out to lunch, and there's Curtis. And you were so accommodating. I don't know if you even knew that what I sought was just a couple of cases just to get me through the week or whatever. Yeah. And you were like, I don't know about this, but you seem like a good fella.
Yeah,
and you helped me carry, I'm carrying 2 cases, you're carrying 1 or 2 cases, and it just barely fit in the trunk of my car, and thank you.
Yeah. That was our first of many things we've done together in the past
right.
years.
Projects and fun stuff we've gotten to do.
So you said with your tennis, what you said you played? Where? Tell me your college background.
I was a nationally ranked kid in the mid '80s. I don't think I was very, very good. I definitely got better in college. I was recruited by a few small Division I schools, and I played at a tiny one in it's called Oglethorpe University. It's in Atlanta, Georgia. It's now Division III. Small liberal arts school, kind of like Trinity, where it was a good level, and then they kind of pared it down a bit. Sure. And I got to do some coaching after that, and played a little bit of, just kind of touched the lowest level of pro tennis. Got a few points, and I enjoyed that. And then, moved out to California for grad school and a job and things like that. And so that's kind of my tennis background. Not an amazing player on the pro tour, but
you were a player.
not bad either.
Well,
yeah.
So like people ask me, and why pickleball? Why do you feel? I mean, how do you feel about it, and why pickleball?
What a great question. I'll answer that with a question. Why not pickleball? It's a ball. It's funny. It's fun. It is. I hear this all the time from pickleballers. which is it's a great sport with a goofy name, and it's easy to learn and hard to master. And I would agree with all those assessments. One of the when you're saying what got me into pickleball, years back, I liked small court tennis before it was a thing, meaning 10 under tennis, red ball, orange ball, whatever. I liked mini tennis as a warm up for just about anybody, because if you're good, it makes you better, and if you're not good, it gets you ready for some of the intricacies that exist in high-level tennis or any level pickleball or squash or anything. So I viewed it as yet another racket sport or paddle sport that I'm gonna love. I even liked racquetball, and I realized a lot of tennis players like, oh man, don't play squash, racquetball, pickleball. It's gonna ruin your tennis. And a lot of racquetball people are like, well, tennis is totally different. I'm not gonna play tennis. It's gonna ruin my, part of my background when I was a teaching pro in California, before I got a director's job out there, I was in my, I would say, mid-20s. I was coming off of playing competitively, and I got a really cool head of juniors job, or director of juniors job at a couple of really nice clubs that were owned by one club that sadly doesn't exist anymore. It's down where the...
It broke after you left.
Well after I left. It broke after the real estate in San Francisco became crazy, right? But it was one of these awesome clubs where we had tennis and squash and swimming, indoor pools and all that. The shout out to Tony Brettkelly, New Zealand guy, Kiwi, on the national squash team for New Zealand. He was the teaching pro in charge of everything in squash, downstairs where the squash courts were. Tennis upstairs, amazing courts, and again, I was head pro of juniors. So sometimes during the day, I would have time to play tennis with Tony and to get my ass handed to me by him in squash. And in tennis, the typical squash player has a little less upper body strength and doesn't serve big because they serve underhand like pickleball, like we do in pickleball. I would beat him, not badly, but his movement was so good. I would beat him in 11-point games in tennis, but when we would play tennis,
oh, you take him to the woodshed?
It was 6-1, 6-2 because he had no serve, right? Then we go downstairs, and it was not close. It was like 11-1, 11-0, 11-0 every time we'd play squash. This is where I felt humbled, because all my life it was, oh, you're amazing at racquetball, squash, you're great at table tennis. Like, the tennis has served you well in all the other sports. But playing with Tony was humbling, and this is what I thought would happen when I would try pickleball the first time. And it was, because the people who were decent, like other tennis pros, we got along and played. This was, you remember when David Redding, who I consider an early adopter, and Craig Bell, my good friend who you've had on this show.
Yes, sir.
So David and Craig introduced me pretty early on to pickle. And again, I'm in there with the other dilettantes who come from tennis to pickle. And then you get your ass handed to you by an actual pickleball player, like a Dominic Greco, who played the pro pickleball before this.
I'm coming for you, Dom. Get ready.
That's right. So the same experience of loving squash, even though I'd only played a little bit all my life, was this is in my 20s. In my, I guess, late 40s, early 50s now, I feel that way about pickleball, that it's a unique challenge, and it's so skill-based, but it's also athletic, so I enjoy that.
So for those people like me, and my other pickleballers out there, I don't really know. I didn't grow up with ever doing squash, so kind of let the listeners know a little bit of maybe a cliff notes of how squash works, because I don't really know.
Oh, squash, it's enclosed like padel. It's typically indoors, although I've seen some plexiglass
is it
outdoors.
Similar court?
It's there's no net, so it's more like a racquetball court.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's a lot like racquetball, but the difference is there's no net, but you can't hit below 18 inches off the floor. There's a tin, they call it, or a telltale line. Oh, wow. So you can't, like in racquetball, you can be a little wristier and hit down. In squash, the racket is longer, like a tennis racket. It's 27 inches.
We need to play squash.
And it's the head is only about a little bigger than your hand.
Oh, yeah. So doesn't Craig have one of those at his office?
Yeah, I actually have one in the car. If you want to, after we're done, I brought it up here.
You're coming back on, so don't worry about it.
So very similar, squash, pickleball, the touch, the feel. There is probably more movement in squash than even tennis.
Really?
And in pickleball, there's less running, I believe, and more. And probably just as much movement if you count little steps, squeaky little
a lot
like
more footwork with
adjustment
purpose
step,
right there, yeah.
and a lot of forward. And I do hear, I've got a close friend who's my age who back in the UK, he played a high level of soccer. He played college soccer here, went back, played a little pro there, and he talks about how we old guys over 50, over 60,
I'm almost there.
They do something called walking football, walking soccer,
Oh.
where the ref he whistles at you if you're jogging. Like you have to walk, and old people love it, and even young people love it. And that's not the deal in pickleball. In other words, sometimes you can return a serve and walk toward the non-volley zone, and there's a little bit of walking involved, but it obviously helps if you're agile and quick. And when you dink one in my feet, I can't just stand there and get it back. There's that little 2 steps, the little movement. So I do love that about pickleball. And as you get older, or even when you're young and amazing, it's challenging still. It's not what people think, which is, there's no running. It's too easy.
So how do you feel like, I got to word this correctly.
Yeah.
Because I was one of those people, and I was. What's a typical thing you hear from a tennis professional who's been in the business for a while, or who's getting off and is just getting ready to start their career, and they kind of shun pickleball? I mean, do you hear a lot of that, or do you feel like some of the tennis pros now are starting to be like, you know what, let's try this?
That's a great question. They're both. There are a lot of both. There are a lot of tennis professionals who have totally embraced pickleball because it's economically viable. Anybody with half a real estate brain understands that it's economically viable, space-wise. It's just
awesome.
really smart.
It's awesome. Yeah.
And anybody with any idea of what people like understand that there's a lower barrier of entry, and people enjoy pickleball a lot. Sometimes people are intimidated by not just the size of the court, but the culture around tennis. And fewer people, I think, are intimidated by the culture around pickleball. I'm sure that's going to change. Sometimes people get into, I'm this level, I'm not going to play with you.
Yeah.
Whatever. But I do see how inclusive and wonderful pickleball is, and I'll tell you a story about that. But I do want to answer your question fully. There are definitely some tennis people who are like, why would I promote pickleball? It's the enemy, or it's biting into my income as a tennis.
Ruins the tennis game, yeah.
Well, are you that fragile?
Exactly.
To anybody who says, no, it ruins, this is what I was saying about squash or racquetball earlier. I never really had that mindset of, even though I always played tennis with a lot of precision, and like I always wanted to serve to the corners or at the bottom. Like I like the precision, and I never want to lose that. But
He was like Chef Adrien, carving it up, or like a surgeon, Dr. Chabria, after hitting those angles. I've seen you play pro-ams, bro. We've been there.
But the thing is, I don't want to be that fragile where, twice a week of another sport is going to ruin my tennis.
Exactly.
I don't play at that level, and I don't want that level of fragility. So that's what I would say to them. And you're right, there are some. I happen to have had coffee with some friends yesterday, and one of them came from he's in sales now in the tennis business. And it could be that economically his company, their interests are fed more by padel, squash, and tennis, but he was highly critical of pickleball. And I thought, let's try one day. It's kind of fun. Like it's incredibly fun.
We're gonna play some. We'll record it and do it, man.
Yeah, there you go.
We will.
We will.
So, well, good, because I guess basically what I'm glad to hear what you're saying is that it's going to be embraced because it is the future, and all ages can play it, from the big kids like us, the bigger kids like my parents, and the little kids.
Yeah.
And that's the most important part that I feel is I feel like I know that all I care about is somebody walking on a pickleball court for the first time and they're intimidated by it. And that's why, it's our job as pickleball pros and what's the word, pickleball?
Ambassadors.
Thank you,
maybe?
sir. I can't spell that, but I can say it, right? Ambassadors. That's why it's important to have guys like you on. And so it sounds to me like people are going to embrace it. And that's.
Well, people are already embracing it. I'll tell you 2 very quick anecdotes.
Sure.
One of my close friends has a sizable backyard, and much of it is paved and driveway and basketball, kind of a sport court kind of thing. And he, for, I don't know, $300-400, got one of those nets with the wheels, and had duct tape lines to see if he liked pickleball, and now he has proper green and blue, and it looks amazing. And we played, and it was like a Thursday night. Instead of a after work, have a dinner or beer or whatever it was, let's play some pickleball. So 4 fellas, and before you know it, their college, this is over Christmas, so their college-age daughters and their friends and one of their sons come over, and they're like, oh, can we play with you guys? And I thought, that didn't happen as much in tennis, where this is a girl who played a high level of lacrosse. That's a kid who's playing college basketball now. That's a kid who's more of a gamer and stopped athletics in, I don't know, 9th, 10th grade or whatever.
Yes.
And these 3 people are clamoring to play with their 50-year-old dads.
That's awesome.
That's hilarious.
That's what I'm talking about.
You definitely don't see that as much in the other sports. And then my other silly sort of anecdote is my good buddy Craig Bell, who's been on the show. Craig and I were doing the live streaming for the, at the time it was the PPA Tour Texas Open pickleball.
Yep.
So we do a site visit. I think we're rolling live Friday, Saturday, Sunday of that week. But the early rounds begin on Thursday, which we're not broadcasting. But we're there on a Wednesday night for a site visit to look at sound, lighting, whatever, Wi-Fi, all that stuff. It's us and ESPN3, and we're just exploring and measuring and that kind of stuff and checking light levels and sound levels. And speaking of light levels, there are, I'm just going to make up a number that I think is about right, 60-something people playing, and most of them are not the pros. They are, I would say all of them were rec level pickleballers who are going to play in the lower levels and not be televised. So we're walking through that area, and literally all the lights go off except on the covered courts.
Oh man.
So all the outdoor tennis lights go off, and as a longtime tennis professional and a successful one at several clubs, you understand what happens when the lights go off and there are X number of people on the courts.
They're
angry. Pretty quickly, they hit a ball to the kid in the shop, like, "Yo, turn those lights
I hate
on,
when
man!"
people do that stuff, man.
So they're hitting the ball at the glass. Pickleballers didn't do that. This is crazy. This is kind of cool. There was a full moon. There was still some lighting. Granted, the court is small and the ball is almost reflective, right? Like it's kind of glowy.
I'd bring some.
Yeah, I think you had one.
I know, but I put it in the other.
Almost that color is the chartreusey kind of or yellow. So they kept playing, and as a guy coming from tennis into broadcasting, I wanted to take video of this. I thought that was kind of amazing, right? And granted, a few of them were like, "Hey, could you please, sir? Could you please?" They're sweet and polite. "Could you please go in there and tell the kid the lights are off or whatever?" And I was like, "Of course," but there wasn't that indignant.
They asked you guys?
No, it was fine. But what I'm sort of saying is it wasn't that righteous indignation of the historically sour attitude of I'm going to bang that kid and wake that kid up.
Yeah, get off your phone.
So the end of the evening, fast forward maybe 20 minutes, they get the lights back on. Everything's rolling. I'm sure it was a power interruption having to do with all the ESPN3 and our company's broadcasting stuff. Everything's chill, everything's great. They go back to playing, and I spent that 20 minutes waiting, just kind of watching the rec level pickleball. By the end of it, I assumed everybody kind of knew each other, but at the end, they're tapping paddles, and they're like,
That's
"Hey,
awesome.
so what was your name again?"
Yeah, see,
I was like, "Wait a minute, you people just met, and I just assumed y'all were pals. You're different ages, whatever." But I guess that's my two sort of anecdotes of what's so. I know my buddy Craig would use the word convivial about pickleball. Convivial with life.
Dorks. You and Craig like dorks.
Yeah. So. When Dennis Miller, he's a big word. He's amazing. But when we use it, we're dorks.
Shut up, man. You're not kidding. So you said your company.
Yeah.
Would you like to tell us more about that?
Oh, it's my buddy Craig owns the equipment, and he'll talk about it like it's expensive hobby, but it's been really cool. He owns the company and the equipment, and we do live streaming. We do
Is that Tex-Mex productions? Okay.
Courtside commentary for other sports, not just tennis. And what it has spurned for me, at least, as a student for the past 4 years of broadcasting, digital marketing, and digital media, I've done with Craig 3 solid years of podcasts called the At the Net Podcast.
You can find that where on Instagram.
Yeah, on Instagram it's the At the Net Talk Show. On Facebook, it's Craig has kind of abbreviated it at the Net Podcast, ATNP, with AJC. My name's Adrien Chabria, and his name is Craig Bell, so CB. And there's a lot of CBs in his house, so we call it CB1. So on Facebook, it's ATNP with AJC and CB1. On Instagram, it's At the Net Talk Show. On YouTube, it's At the Net Podcast. Sorry, 3 different names, but you'll find us. And we do a lot of pickleball programming. We do a lot of tennis programming. And as we joke, anything with a net, we've had soccer, basketball,
anything with
hockey.
So you said you've done some. What are some other things Tex-Mex has done recently? Or the past 6 to 8 months.
Not Tex-Mex, but
I'm
me
sorry.
personally,
Yes, sir.
what it has led to is a lot of the companies that like our social media or me doing voice acting, voiceovers, whatever, they reach out to us or reach out to me to do content-based advertising, to guest on a talk show like this, to interview somebody to make an ad feel like a talk show. So we do a lot of that. And I'll give you a quick example.
That's
there was
fine.
an
No,
amazing...
you're good, man. You're good.
Yeah, and when I was saying that anything with a net, there was a really, really high-level soccer club called WinStars Soccer Academy. They're out of Vaughan, Ontario. Nice. Basically, it's a affluent, sort of nice suburb of Toronto.
Canadian friends.
So they were down here. They won a match, lost a match to some Division 1. These kids this is an under-19 team. So nobody's 19. Everybody's either 18, 17, or 16.
Oh, wow, cool.
These kids beat the Canadian national team, and they went 1 win, 1 loss, 1 tie with 3 Division 1 college teams on their drive down here, 22-hour drive from Toronto to Dallas. They played in the, I think it was other teams, so it's not a national championship, it's more than national, U19 championships at Toyota Stadium, right? So when they were here, you were asking what Tex-Mex. So I did filming, I did instructional videos, and I did interviews and 15, 20, 30-second vignettes with music. Wow. And, you know, I'll make it specific, like, okay, you guys from Toronto, let's use this music. Yeah. Or you guys are fans of both kinds of music, country and Western, like Ren. Yeah. So I'll go that kind of music. But for these guys, I use Drake or some other Canadian hip-hop artists, and, you know, they were happy with that kind of stuff. So we do that kind of stuff, too, not just courtside commentary.
Well, you know, I would say that in conclusion here, I would say that you've been a great mentor and a friend.
Oh, thank you, Curtis. You have too.
I'd love to have you back on. You know, and
if you have
some time. But you know, it's pickleball is something that
I want to interview you and ask you all these fun questions, like what got you into pickleball, you know? Because you're a compelling guest.
No, but pickleball is the way to go. Tennis is the way to go. We gotta get on a squash court. I'd like to video that, and you can
Let's
make me
do it.
I'll put my ass hat on and get killed by you.
I've actually got 1 wood racket that's squash, and I've got 2 sort of current graphite rackets, and I'll just put good strings in them, and I've got a case of balls. We can play squash.
Well, look, this concludes our program for today. Yeah. But make sure, those of you listeners out there, when you download the app, check out all our other shows we have on there. There's a myriad of them, and that's a big word for me, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
And they're all great, and I look forward to being on some of those and having some of them on here with me as well. And always remember one thing. Come on, let's pickle.
Let's pickle.
Hey, man, take it easy.
Thanks a lot. Curtis, what a pleasure, bro.